I knew my husband was cheating the moment I found a bottle of viagra in his work bag, but when I found out he was planning a whole celebration with his mistress, something inside me snapped. So I quietly replaced his precious performance pills with the strongest laxatives I could find. I thought it would just ruin their little party. I didn't expect the level of chaos that followed. And trust me, when the truth came out, he wasn't the only one who ended up humiliated. I was 45 years old when I finally admitted to myself that my marriage wasn't a partnership anymore. It was a performance, and I was the only one still rehearsing her lines. For months, my husband, Daniel, had been acting different. Not the kind of different that comes with age or stress, but the slippery, anxious, paranoid type of different that wives recognize immediately in their bones. He started showering late at night, something he hadn't done in 20 years of marriage. He suddenly cared about the cologne he wore to work meetings. He would sit with his phone glued to his hand, screen facing down, even to go pee. And every time he came home from these so-called meetings, he'd look at me with this tight, polite smile that felt more like guilt trying to wear the mask of affection. At 45, you don't need Facebook relationship coaches or best friend group chats to tell you what's happening in your home. Your instincts scream it before your logic accepts it. I knew something was wrong. I just wasn't ready to face it. The real alarm bell rang one afternoon while I was putting away laundry. Daniel had taken the day off for a conference, but he was home long enough to forget his briefcase. And I noticed a small black bottle tucked inside. The kind of bottle men don't leave lying around unless they think their wives won't dare to snoop. Performance pills. Not vitamins, not supplements, not anything he'd ever needed for me. My hand literally went cold holding it. Why would a man who hadn't touched me in months suddenly need performance help? Why did he hide it in the bottom of his briefcase, under old receipts? Why was he suddenly built like a peacock and smelling like a perfume counter? My chest felt tight, that tightness that comes right before heartbreak or rage, but you're not sure which one will win. I didn't confront him. I wanted to. Lord knows, I wanted to. But after 20 years of marriage, you learn that confronting a liar before you have proof is like arguing with a brick wall. You only end up hurting yourself. So I waited, and the proof came the next morning. Not through detective work, not through snooping, just sheer carelessness on his part. He was in the shower singing, which he only did when he was feeling suspiciously happy, and his phone lit up on the dresser. A message banner appeared. "Can't wait for tonight, baby. Got the candles." Tea, candles. Candles for who? Certainly not for me. The last time that man lit a candle for me was our 15th anniversary, and even then, he did it wrong and set off the smoke alarm. My hands shook as I unlocked his phone. The password was still my birthday. Imagine that, using my birthday to organize an affair. The disrespect wasn't even creative. What I saw made my stomach churn. Chat logs, reservations, voice notes, inside jokes, and then the final blow. "Bring the pills. I want the full experience tonight." The room spun for a moment. I had to sit on the bed. It wasn't just cheating. It was celebration. It was planning. It was romance. With someone else. Do you know how humiliating it is to realize your husband is giving another woman the version of himself he never gave you? Not the tired, distracted, emotionally unavailable version you've been surviving with for years, but the excited, eager, energetic man he chose to be for someone new. I put his phone down gently, then I stood up, then I inhaled deeply. My heartbreak shattered, and something sharper replaced it. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg him to choose me. I was going to choose myself. And choosing myself meant one thing. He was going to experience the consequences of his betrayal in a way he would never forget. That was the moment the idea came. Simple, precise, poetic. I walked into the bathroom. The bottle of performance pills sat in his toiletry bag like a trophy. I opened it slowly, very, very slowly. Then, I did what any woman who's had her dignity shredded would do. Not violently, not illegally, not dangerously, just cleverly. I emptied every last pill into the trash, and I refilled the bottle with something that would change the course of his celebration forever. The strongest, fastest, most unforgiving laxatives known to mankind. When I closed that bottle, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel crazy. I felt calm. For the first time in months, I felt in control. For the rest of the day, I moved with the kind of quiet confidence only a woman pushed past her breaking point can understand. I cooked dinner. I hummed a little. I even asked Daniel how his conference went. And the way he stumbled over his own words almost made me laugh. He had no idea that the balance of power in our marriage had shifted. He didn't know that his lies were now sitting in a neat little bottle under the sink, transformed into something that would introduce him to God in a hotel bathroom later that night. But I knew, and that was enough. He came home unusually early, wearing that guilty smug smile men wear when they've spent the day texting someone they shouldn't. His energy was almost youthful. It disgusted me a little. "Honey, I won't be home tonight," he said casually, dropping his tie like he was in a cologne commercial. "Oh?" I asked with innocent surprise. "Yeah, late-night meeting. Big project. We might have to work through the night." He kissed my cheek, a kiss I didn't feel. "And don't wait up." It was the "don't wait up" that almost made me break character, as if I had ever waited up for him recently, as if I wasn't already the wife he tucked neatly into the background of his double life. But I simply nodded, because tonight wasn't about emotional arguments or tears. Tonight was about the universe collecting its debt. I watched him dress like he was going on a date he wanted to impress. New shirt, new cologne, a little extra hair gel, and of course, the black bottle of pills, which he slid into his pocket like a secret weapon. If only he knew what kind of weapon it actually was. He winked at me, a wink he hadn't used on me in years. "See you tomorrow." I smiled back warmly. If an Oscar committee had been in my kitchen, I would have won Best Actress. After Daniel left, I poured myself a glass of wine. Not to celebrate, not to mourn, just to steady my hands, because what I had done was beginning to sink in, and with it came a strange cocktail of emotions I hadn't anticipated. Satisfaction mixed with a tiny thread of doubt that I immediately squashed like a bug. Did he deserve this? Yes. Would he survive it? Absolutely. Would he ever forget it? Not a chance. I sat in the living room with the TV on, but not really watching. My mind kept replaying the timeline of the evening ahead. He'd arrive at whatever fancy restaurant or hotel he'd booked. He'd take the pills, probably in the bathroom, thinking himself so clever. Then he'd sit down with her, whoever she was, and wait for the magic to kick in. Except the only thing kicking in would be his digestive system, and it would kick hard. I imagined him at a candle-lit table, trying to be charming, trying to be the man he never was for me anymore. I imagined the first cramp hitting him mid-sentence, the confusion, the denial, then the urgency. The thought almost made me laugh. Almost, but there was still a part of me, the part that had loved him once, that had built a life with him, that felt something close to sadness, not for what I'd done, but for what we'd lost, for the fact that it had come to this. 20 years, 20 years of compromise and patience and forgiveness, and this was how it ended, with me sitting alone in our living room, weaponizing laxatives like some kind of suburban vigilante. But then I remembered the texts, the candles, the way he kissed my cheek like I was a roommate he tolerated, and the sadness evaporated. I finished my wine and went to bed early, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to be well rested for whatever tomorrow would bring. I woke up the next morning to silence. Daniel hadn't come home. Not surprising. He'd probably stayed at a hotel with her, or maybe he was still recovering in whatever bathroom he'd destroyed. Either way, I went about my morning routine with a strange sense of peace. Coffee. Shower. A long, uninterrupted shower where I didn't have to rush. It felt like the first morning of my new life, and then my phone rang. It was my best friend, Monica. "Hey girl," I answered, trying to sound normal. "Have you heard from Tessa?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. Tessa, Monica's daughter, 24 years old, just out of college, working some marketing job in the city. "No, why?" I asked, genuinely confused. "She's not answering her phone. She told me she had a date last night, and I haven't heard from her since. I'm probably being paranoid, but I'm sure she's fine," I interrupted gently. "You know how young people are. She probably just slept in." "Yeah, you're probably right," Monica said, though she didn't sound convinced. "It's just, she seemed really excited about this guy. Said he was older, established, really into her. I don't know, something felt off about the whole thing." My stomach clenched. Older, established. "Did she say his name?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "No, she was being all secretive about it. You know Tessa, she loves her drama." I forced a laugh. "Well, let me know when she surfaces. I'm sure she's fine." We said our goodbyes, and I hung up. Then I stood there in my kitchen, holding my phone, feeling the universe tilt slightly on its axis. It couldn't be. Could it? Daniel and Tessa? No, that was insane. Tessa was Monica's daughter. I'd known her since she was 4 years old. I'd been to her high school graduation, her college send-off party. She called me Aunt Claire, even though we weren't related. There was no way Daniel would... But then I remembered the texts. T, not a full name, just an initial, Tessa. My hands started shaking. I told myself I was jumping to conclusions, that there were probably thousands of women whose names started with T, that my paranoia was making connections that didn't exist. But deep down, in that place where wives know things before they have proof, I knew. I knew. I tried calling Daniel, straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Still nothing. By noon, I was pacing the house like a caged animal, my mind racing through every possible scenario. If it really was Tessa, if my husband was sleeping with my best friend's daughter, then what I'd done last night wasn't just revenge, it was a nuclear bomb about to detonate in the middle of all our lives. I tried to imagine how it would unfold. Monica finding out, the betrayal she'd feel, not just from Daniel, but from Tessa, the way our friendship would implode, the whispers in our social circle, the judgment, and worst of all, the realization that I'd known Daniel was cheating and hadn't said anything, that I'd taken matters into my own hands instead of being honest with my best friend. I felt sick. Not because I regretted what I'd done to Daniel. He deserved every miserable moment of whatever hell he'd experienced last night. But because if Tessa was involved, this wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This was about to destroy everything. The call came at 2:47 p.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Is this Claire Hartman?" a professional female voice asked. "Yes. This is St. Mary's Hospital. Your husband, Daniel Hartman, was brought into the emergency room this morning. You're listed as his emergency contact." The room spun. "What happened?" I managed to ask. "He was found unconscious in a hotel bathroom. Severe dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. We've stabilized him, but he's going to need to stay overnight for observation." Unconscious. Hotel bathroom. Severe dehydration. Oh God. "Is he okay?" I asked, because that's what wives are supposed to ask, even when part of them is thinking karma is real and efficient. "He will be. But you should come down. He's asking for you." Of course he was, because when men get caught, when their carefully constructed lies collapse around them, they always run back to their wives. "I'll be there soon," I said, and hung up. Then I sat down on the couch and stared at nothing for a full minute. Part of me wanted to laugh. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to drive to that hospital and ask him if it was worth it. if his night of passion with someone young enough to be our daughter was worth shitting himself unconscious in a hotel bathroom. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of the lies. Tired of the performance. Tired of being the woman who had to clean up the mess of a man who couldn't even cheat competently. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. St. Mary's Hospital was a 15-minute drive that felt like an hour. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would act, whether I'd play the concerned wife or finally let the mask drop. When I walked into the emergency room, I gave his name at the desk, and a nurse led me back through a maze of curtained-off beds and beeping machines. And there he was, Daniel, my husband of 20 years, lying in a hospital bed, IV in his arm, looking about as dignified as a man can look when he's wearing a hospital gown and has clearly been through gastrointestinal hell. "Claire," he said weakly when he saw me. His voice cracked. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "What happened?" I asked, though I already knew every detail of what had happened. I could have written him a minute-by-minute timeline. "I don't know," he said, and even now, even here, he was still lying. "I think it was food poisoning. I was at dinner and—" "Dinner with who?" I asked calmly. He froze, just for a second. But it was enough. "Colleagues," he said, "from the conference." I nodded slowly. "Really? Because the hospital said you were found alone in a hotel bathroom." His face went pale, or paler than it already was. I went back to the hotel after, everyone else left and—" "Stop. One word, that's all it took." He stopped, and in the silence that followed, I watched 20 years of marriage dissolve like sugar in hot water. "Who is she?" I asked quietly. "Claire, who is she?" He closed his eyes. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." For a long moment he said nothing, and then finally the truth. "Her name is Tessa." The world stopped. Even though I'd suspected it, even though some part of me had known since Monica's call this morning, hearing him say her name out loud felt like being punched in the chest. "Tessa," I repeated numbly. "Monica's Tessa?" He wouldn't look at me. "How long?" I asked. "Claire, how long?" 3 months. 3 months, 90 days. 90 days of him coming home and kissing my cheek and sleeping in our bed while he was sleeping with a 24-year-old girl I'd watched grow up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to set the hospital on fire and walk away. But instead I laughed. A short, sharp, humorless laugh that made him flinch. "Do you know what's funny?" I asked. "Last night you took those performance pills, the ones you've been hiding from me. The ones you needed for her." His eyes widened slightly. "Do you want to know what was really in that bottle, Daniel?" Silence. Laxatives, industrial strength, fast-acting laxatives. I watched the realization dawn on his face. The horror, the humiliation, the understanding that everything that had happened to him last night, the cramps, the urgency, the catastrophic loss of control in a hotel bathroom while trying to impress a woman half his age, was my doing. "You," he started but couldn't finish. "I did," I confirmed. "And honestly, I only regret that I wasn't there to watch." Before he could respond, before he could try to turn himself into the victim of this story, my phone rang. "Monica." I looked at Daniel. Then I answered. "Claire," Monica's voice was frantic, borderline hysterical. "It's Tessa. She just called me from the police station." My heart stopped. "What? Why is she at the police station?" "She was at some hotel last night with a man, she won't tell me who, and apparently he got violently ill and passed out, and when the paramedics came, they found her trying to help him, and there was a whole scene, and—" I closed my eyes. "And she's saying it's all a misunderstanding, but the hotel is threatening to press charges for the mess in the room, and she's hysterical, and Claire, I don't know what to do." I could hear Tessa crying in the background, could hear her saying something I couldn't quite make out, and then Monica's voice dropped to a whisper. "Claire." She finally told me who the man was. Silence. Long, terrible silence. She said it was Daniel. The way she said his name, like she couldn't quite believe it, like she was waiting for me to tell her it was impossible, that there had been some mistake, broke something inside me. I know, I said quietly. You know? I'm at the hospital with him right now. I heard Monica's sharp intake of breath. You knew he was cheating. I found out yesterday. And you didn't tell me. There was hurt in her voice, betrayal. The kind that comes from realizing your best friend kept a secret that would rip your family apart. Monica, my daughter, Claire. He was sleeping with my daughter. I didn't know it was Tessa until this morning, I said. I swear to God, I didn't know. But even as I said it, I knew it didn't matter. The damage was done. Our friendship, 25 years of birthday parties and girls' nights and shared secrets, was now collateral damage in the wreckage of my marriage. I have to go, Monica said, her voice hollow. I have to go get Tessa. Monica, wait. But she'd already hung up. I stood there in that hospital room, phone in hand, looking at my husband who'd betrayed me with my best friend's daughter. And I realized something profound. Revenge isn't justice. It's just another form of destruction. And I'd just destroyed everything. Daniel was released from the hospital the next morning with a prescription for electrolyte supplements and a warning about food safety. The irony wasn't lost on me. I drove him home in silence. He tried to talk once, started to say something about working through this, and I turned the radio up so loud he stopped mid-sentence. When we got home, I told him to pack a bag. Claire, please, pack a bag. He did. And while he packed, I sat on our bed, the bed we'd shared for 20 years, and thought about everything that had led to this moment, the slow erosion of intimacy, the way we'd stopped seeing each other as people and started seeing each other as obstacles, the way I'd become invisible to him, just furniture in a life he was trying to escape. And yes, the way I'd chosen revenge over honesty, the way I'd let my hurt turn into something cruel. Was I sorry for what I'd done to him? No, but was I sorry for the fallout? God, yes. Monica wouldn't take my calls. Tessa had been released from the police station. The hotel ultimately decided not to press charges after Daniel agreed to pay for the damages, but the story had already started spreading through our social circle. Whispers, rumors. The kind of scandal that turns a person into a punchline. Daniel moved into an apartment downtown. I filed for divorce 3 days later. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers and paperwork and deeply uncomfortable conversations. Daniel tried to paint himself as the victim, claimed I'd poisoned him, that what I'd done was assault. My lawyer laughed in his face. Your client was cheating on his wife with a woman young enough to be his daughter, she said calmly. And you want to press charges because she switched his erectile dysfunction pills with laxatives. Good luck with that optics. He dropped it. Because at the end of the day, Daniel was many things, but he wasn't stupid enough to turn his affair into a courtroom spectacle. The divorce was finalized in 4 months. I got the house, he got his freedom, and we both got to live with the consequences of who we'd become. 6 months after everything fell apart, I ran into Tessa at a grocery store. She was in the produce section, looking thin and tired and about a decade older than she had at Christmas. When she saw me, she froze. I could have walked away, should have, probably, but something made me walk toward her instead. Hi, I said quietly. Hi, she whispered back. We stood there for a moment, 2 women who'd been caught in the blast radius of a man's selfishness. I'm sorry, she said suddenly, tears welling up in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Aunt Claire. I didn't know he was married when we first met, and then when I found out, I thought... I don't know what I thought. I was stupid and selfish and... You were 24, I interrupted gently, and he was a grown man who should have known better. She looked at me with such raw gratitude that I almost started crying too. Does your mom... I started to ask. She's speaking to me again, Tessa said. Barely, but it's something. I nodded. And you? She asked. Are you okay? Was I okay? I'd lost my husband, my best friend, the life I'd built over 2 decades. But I'd also gained something I hadn't had in years. Myself. I'm getting there, I said honestly. And I was. Because here's what no one tells you about betrayal. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the thing that finally sets you free. I never heard from Daniel again after the divorce. According to mutual acquaintances, he started dating someone new within 3 months, a woman his own age, apparently, which was at least a minor improvement in judgment. Monica and I had coffee once, about a year later. It was awkward, painful, but it was also necessary. We didn't fix our friendship. Some things, once broken, can't be put back together the same way. But we found a kind of peace with each other, an understanding that we'd both been casualties of the same war. As for me, I sold the house. Too many ghosts, too many memories of the woman I'd been, the woman who'd waited and performed and made herself smaller to accommodate a man who didn't deserve it. I moved into a small apartment downtown, got a job at a non-profit I actually cared about, and started building a life that belonged entirely to me. No performances, no rehearsals, just me. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did, if I regret the laxatives, the revenge, the way it all exploded so spectacularly. And the honest answer is, I don't know. Do I wish I'd handled it differently? Maybe. Do I wish I'd been the bigger person? Sometimes. But do I regret standing up for myself, even in the messiest, most imperfect way possible? No, because for the first time in 20 years, I chose myself. I chose my dignity. I chose to stop being invisible. And if the cost of that was a little chaos, a little public humiliation, his not mine, and a marriage that was already dead anyway, then so be it. At 45 years old, I learned something important. You can spend your whole life being the good wife, the understanding wife, the wife who forgives and accommodates and makes excuses. Or you can be the wife who says enough, who draws a line, who walks away from a man who stopped seeing her years ago. I chose the latter, and I've never looked back. It's been 3 years now since that night, 3 years since I switched those pills and set in motion a chain of events that changed everything. Daniel is apparently engaged to the woman he started dating after our divorce. Good for him, I guess. Tessa moved to another city for a fresh start. Monica sends me a Christmas card every year with a short, polite note. And me? I'm dating someone new, someone kind, someone who sees me, someone who doesn't need performance pills, pharmaceutical or otherwise. Because what we have is real, simple, honest. Sometimes late at night, when I'm lying in bed next to this new person who actually wants to be there, I think about that moment in my old bathroom when I opened that bottle of pills. The moment I decided to stop being a victim of my own life, and I smile. Because that moment, messy and petty and imperfect as it was the moment I started living again. Not for anyone else, just for me. And that, more than any revenge, more than any justice, more than any perfectly orchestrated downfall of a cheating husband, that was worth everything.